I'm suggesting to you that everyone makes relative errors in the way they describe things.
Sure.
But if you are saying that a particular piece of literature is perfect, then that error shouldn't take place. So there's differences in relative errors. So lots of people can make slang descriptions of how things work or how they don't work. When you looked on your phone what time the sun set, it has background information which gives your location service, because actually the sunset is setting all the time, isn't it? It doesn't set to 5:53 here, 4:53 here, whatever it is. It's actually setting everywhere, and in essence the sun is just the sun, isn't it? It doesn't disappear.
So you accept that this is not an error, even though it says sunset?
No. I'm saying to you that we make all relative descriptions, and they could be technically seen as errors or not. But what I would say is that it's a grammatically descriptive error to say that the sun is setting in the sea.
The error in your description right now is this: when the Quran describes someone's perception, how they perceive the sun setting, you're saying it's an error. You should ask Dhul Qarnayn why he's making that assumption. Why? Because he's actually seeing it. So it's a perception of Dhul Qarnayn. If you saw and you said, I saw it setting behind the trees, and somebody says, oh, it's an error of a description, then perhaps you need to be real open to understanding of how language works.
Can you quote me 1883 then, where it says in the Quran, in your best...
it says very clearly, وَجَدَ عِنْدَهَا تَغْرُبُ. He found it going down. So in his perception, that's how he saw it, and the Quran is simply describing it, and yet you consider it to be error. I have to say, really, you have to do better than that.
Why would if you've got any water source, a puddle or anything, then effectively you could have a perception of the sun setting in any kind of reflection. Why would you even bother putting that into?
I find it strange the way you...
Because it's a place.
I find it strange the way you look at a text. When the text gives you description of an event that happened, you are saying, why is it like that? It should be like this instead. Quran describes the events, the journeys of a person called Dhul Qarnayn, the two-horned ones. He went east and he went west. He went to different people and how he interacted with the people. You were saying, oh, why did he discuss with these people? He should have discussed with the Europeans. That's your problem. When the Quran says this particular individual went to a place near sunset, so he was there when the sun was setting. And where did he perceive in his perception the sun was setting? In this hamia. Yes?
What's that mean?
In the spring. He saw it going down in the spring. You are saying, oh, this is an error. I have to say that not only your understanding of literature is very weak, as well as understanding common language when people describe what people saw in when they narrate it back. So if you consider this is an error, then I have to say, really, you need to deeply reflect on your life, deeply. Because the Quran says, have they not considered the Quran with care, with utter, deep reflection? If you did, you will find no discrepancies whatsoever. That's the challenge of the Quran. You look at the surface and say, oh, it's an error. I'm sorry to say that.
Is it a possibility, if you don't mind me asking, is it a possibility that it was talking about by what you read here? Is there a possibility it meant that it's going just a normal sunset that he was describing? Is there a possibility?
Well, I think that's the argument, isn't it? But you put words into my mouth. I'm saying that if it is a normal sunset near any element of near a hot spring or otherwise, the issue is what is the question I would ask you, because you have read it deeply and I haven't, is why would you, not that it's why would you want to locate a place with a piece of water and then link that into the that's a genuine question.
Yeah, fair. I don't think that really proves one way or the other. Should I explain something to you? Have you had the verses?
No, because I guess there's two I think it'd be difficult. There's two hypotheses really, isn't it? There's one that would be the argument that this is a literal situation of the sun setting a place in the world where it sets, and that's a description of it. And there is a people around that people. So it's a very meaningful place, the exact place where the sun sets. That's one hypothesis, which would be an argument, which is falsifiable. And the other argument is that it's just a sunset near a pool of water.
Okay, and do you have that other verse? Right. I just want to show.
What the Quran is simply saying, in his travels, he came then, when the sun was setting, he came to a place near sunset, right? Time or place? So when he came to that place and the sun was setting, you are saying, why does anywhere? Why does the Quran give extra detail? It's because this is what he saw. What's your problem with that?
In the Black Ages.
Well, it's not a matter of.
What's your problem?
The problem with that is the meaning or the benefit of that description in the Quran.
The benefit of the description is describing how he perceived in that setting.
He came to a body of water where he couldn't go further. He saw the sun setting. He's saying that's his furthest he reached. What I want to show you was, do you want to read the next verse? If you don't mind, Brother Mansur. Have you got the?
Before we go into this, this is quite interesting. Now you're questioning that it's not an error. This is your underlying assumption now. It's not an error.
I was correcting the issue about you putting words in my mouth.
But you made these errors of assumptions. You are saying it's an error. Of what kind? Grammatical description.
You keep telling me that I made it an error. What I was actually arguing.
I am showing you the errors in your thinking. That's what I'm doing. Another time, he reached a place when the sun was rising at that time, and he dealt with this kind of people, a group of people. It's a way of describing the time he reached to a particular area of people, and he had some interactions with them. By saying this is an error in the Quran, I am clearly saying people are not reading the Quran properly, they're not even thinking deeply, and they're just generating errors when the errors doesn't even exist. That's all.
I guess the reason why that happens is because people are considering that perhaps at the time people had a more magical view of where the sun set, or even the earth being flat, and so therefore the context, although it seems ludicrous from a 20th century, 21st century mind, it may be within that context different. And that's where
a 20th century mind reading the Quran, when the Quran doesn't say the earth is flat, and he's just simply saying this man journeys. Look, what people try to import in their own thinking, errors and contradictions when reading the Quran. For these people, Quran says, reflect deeply, ponder on the Quran deeply. When you ponder on the Quran deeply, nothing of these sorts of contradictions that you've generated in your mind will remain. The Quran doesn't say there is no contradiction. It says, have you أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ? Have they made tadabbur, deep reflection and contemplation? They would have found that there's no discrepancies whatsoever. So this discrepancy is in the mind of superficial reading. That's all I'm arguing. Superficial reading, you can believe in anything. Oh, the Quran says like wonderful, astonishing.
Here's another two hypotheses: is that there potentially are some errors in the Quran,
such as.
No. Let me just put the hypothesis first. There's potentially errors in the Quran, and obviously it puts itself in a position of zero errors. So it's unlike the Bible, and so there's potentially errors in the Quran, and that scholars have argued away those errors. That would be one hypothesis. The other hypothesis is there is absolutely no errors.
No. A very strange way of looking at things. This is the Quran. It either has errors or it doesn't. You only have two options, and you examine them both with claims. If you have errors, you should be able to find them. If you can't find any errors, the Quranic claim stands. It is free from errors.
There's the other description. 'Cause, I mean, Islam was the beginning of algebra, wasn't it?
Let's return back to the Quran.
That was the
Quran either has errors within it or it doesn't. You have no other alternative options.
So the other
You have no other options.
the other famous possible error that you can refute is the issue around inheritance. When the argument that I'm talking about.
What is the error in inheritance?
The issue would be that I can't remember the details on it.
So if you have a father or mother leaving certain
with
portions,
the parents survive,
and you have children
and
like
it would
this,
be divided
it doesn't
by 8,
add up.
9
Right. But here is the problem. Every single verse which talks about this, if you apply that situation, you'll never come to an error. Where does the Quran say? I'm arguing in one different point. Where does the Quran say you have to take that situation from one verse, and another situation from one verse, and amalgamate and make a new rule? Every single verse or ayah in the Quran which talks about a particular inheritance, this situation amounts to exactly, mathematically, as you would say, correct description in your own mathematical understanding, right? You would say that's exactly, it doesn't go beyond one, it doesn't go less than one. It's exactly as it is. When you amalgamate one, hang on, not circumstance. Where does the Quran say when you have a father leaving 2 daughters and one mother? Let me hypothetically, because I can't remember exactly. Imagine now there's an error which is what? You have a father who has 2 daughters, 1 brother, 1 sister, whatever, for the sake of argument. And that goes. Does the Quran give you rules for this anywhere?
Well, it's a pity that I can't quote the exact argument.
No, we can bring it up. Imagine this is the case. But the case that you generate doesn't exist in the Quranic example. It doesn't say that. If you have this situation, then this is what you give, and then it makes an error.
It says how it should be calculated.
This particular situation, so Quran never gives you, if you have a father or a mother who lives this kind of brothers or sisters and daughters, it doesn't give you that scenario. So where do you get the scenario?
Well, no.
There is no scenario, there is no ruling.
It gives you the rule. It gives you the rule.
It doesn't give you a ruling for that.
No, but it gives you the rules for what happens and how you divide inheritance.
It doesn't give you the rules for that specific situation.
General rules.
Now you're confusing things.
No, I'm not.
It does not give you the rules for that specific situation.
Does it give general rules? Does it give general
No,
rules?
it gives specific rules. Specific rules.
Specific rules?
Yes. It tells you if you have a deceased who left behind a son or a daughter and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Specific rules.
Well, those are the rules.
They're not general rules.
They're the rules.
When you
But if you
specify,
apply those
when you apply these rules to which situation?
to this example.
But this situation is not covered in these rules.
No, but if you apply those
I don't get it. You cannot apply a situation which is not described in these rules. It's not inclusive of it.
so the Quran doesn't explain all the situation of how you would divide the inheritance in that situation.
In that situation, the Quran doesn't give you any rules.
Well, it's still got all the different rules, hasn't it?
Sorry?
You apply, like in a law court, you apply the rules that you've got.
Can you ask the gentleman? The ashes are coming in our eyes.
The situation.
This situation, the Quran hasn't given you any rules. So you can't say this rule is mathematically incorrect when such a rule doesn't exist.
But if you apply all the rules that are there to this situation, it becomes.
But you're applying them, amalgamating 2 different rules for a situation that the Quran doesn't describe. Why are you amalgamating different rules for a situation the Quran doesn't even describe?
Because you've got to apply the rules that you've got.
No, you can get the rules from the Sunnah if it doesn't exist in the Quran.
And what are the rules in the Sunnah then?
If you get the rules from the Sunnah, then your question about the Quran gets the rule wrong is totally redundant. It's a made-up error, made-up mistake in the Quran, which doesn't even exist. The Quran doesn't have a rule for that situation.
No, it doesn't describe that exact situation, but it does have a set of rules, and if they're applied to that situation, it doesn't work.
I am saying, why are you applying rules which doesn't even apply? It is not for that situation. Quran hasn't given you a set of rules to apply in these situations. It hasn't, simply. By amalgamating different rules, of course you're going to make confusion.
Well, I think that's
I'm stating to you what is obvious. The Quran specifies rules for a certain situation, specifies rule for another situation, specifies rule for another situation, and so on. By mixing and matching, you are creating rules to generate error. You are doing that yourself. The Quran hasn't given you a rule which constitutes an error in the first place.
Well, I know. I mean, I can't say more than what I've said. If you apply the rules that are given to you, you've got a family.
But the rules that you're applying doesn't even exist in the Quran. That for that particular situation, you are amalgamating different rules, making up a new rule.
You've got a family, and something happens, and you look to the Quran.
You go to the Sunnah if it doesn't exist.
And what does it say in the Sunnah?
Suppose the Sunnah gives you a rule, and it gives you a solution. That's it.
And does it?
And it does.
To that situation?
Yes. Similar situation.
A similar situation?
No. The situation that you're giving the Quran, if it doesn't, the Sunnah does.
Are you sure?
Yeah, many rules the Sunnah provides. Many rules.
Well, I don't know enough about it. Do you know the specifics?
No, I'm just telling you, if it doesn't exist in the Quran, the Sunnah will explain and give you the rulings. So you will be in error by saying the Quran in this situation has got it wrong because it hasn't even got this rule in the first place.